Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Here we are. My name is Preston Jacobs, and we're talking about some ice and fire stuff. Um, yeah, welcome back. I was on vacation for a week. I went to Curacao. Um, uh, my kids got hand, foot, and mouth and while we were there, and so it was pretty exhausting. So, but nonetheless, I'm still trying to get it over with myself. And the topic tonight, I wanted to talk about the Brotherhood without banners. However, I will say, um, uh, I may have been a little ambitious with choosing the topic tonight. Um, I realized, I was putting things together. I was like, "What's interesting today? Do I want to talk about the Kingswood Brotherhood?" Well, if I'm talking about the Kingswood Brotherhood, I've got to talk about the Brotherhood without banners. And then I bring up the Brotherhood without banners, and it's like, oh my god, there's just way too much. There's way too much, and I don't know if I can talk about it in a linear fashion, and if it'll make any sense at all. I may just ramble for a while on the Brotherhood without banners because I don't know what else to do. Um, the Brotherhood without banners, um, many people obviously retroactively, the discussion of the Brotherhood without banners goes back to Eddard sending Beric Dondarrion and his men out to bring the king, to bring Gregor Clegane to justice. Obviously, um, for the rest, and then by the end of A Game of Thrones, you hear about Beric's band surviving and harrying and causing trouble for the Lannisters and the Riverlands. Now, as much as Beric makes a very early appearance, in his form as the leader of a stand-in for Robin Hood, that doesn't come to be until A Storm of Swords. We hear about Beric causing trouble all through Clash of Kings, all the way at the end. By the end of a Game of Thrones, he's doing this. But weirdly enough, there's not the references to this idea that he is Robin Hood, and the meaning of that comes in full force when we get to A Storm of Swords. And when I say this is important, keep in mind that when A Game of Thrones begins, the first chapter, the prologue, is from the perspective of Will, and um, Will is put on the wall for poaching, and George R. R. Martin kind of introduces into the story this class struggle between the poor and the rich in that first chapter. And slowly over time, the class struggle of the Song of Ice and Fire kind of disappears. But I want to keep in mind that poaching element, because poaching, today we would, because resources are tight and animals are going extinct, we don't think about this. But in previous eras, when the idea that nature was so infinite, and there are so many animals and so much wood and things like that, the idea of the king or a lord saying that this is my forest and you're not allowed to hunt in it, that it's no longer the people's forest for their public hunting, is considered kind of this weird, crime, like not in a criminal actual legal sense, but in this, in this class sense, that they're saying like, I am taking nature away from the man who can regularly survive out there on his own, and taking his livelihood away. And now if you kill an animal on my land, even though I've got plenty of land and I'm not even, those animals are just chilling and not doing anything, they're going to die on their own. If you go in and kill my animals, that's a crime. And Will is in the Night's Watch for a crime that in a medieval sense is not really a crime, right? He's going into nature and he's hunting for himself. And now he's sent to the wall for this crime. Now, again, in a modern context, this doesn't work because we have limited resources and animals are hunted to extinction and things like this. But in the mindset of hundreds of years ago, where nature is infinite, this is an injustice. And keep in mind that Robin Hood is a poacher. All right, he is the crime that he has committed is poaching on the king's land, and it's considered not really a real crime. It's this injustice, which is why he is now going into a life of thieving, where he robs from the rich and gives to the poor. After this, so it's not that George isn't in tune with Robin Hood from the beginning. In fact, he frames the first fucking chapter of Ice and Fire on Robin Hood. Will is guilty of the same crime in the same circumstances as Robin Hood. But then that class struggle it slowly phases out. We have Micah, and stuff like that, really important. And then over time, the class struggle vanishes from the story, and it's mostly a political struggle of highborn people. Now, back to Beric. Beric is this force. It's very clear that George R. R. Martin had this idea that Beric is going to be an important character very early on. He shows up. George makes a point of mentioning him at the Hand's Tourney. It's very important that Beric Dondarrion is a character, and then he keeps referencing Beric over and over and over. The number of references to Beric's, like the problems that Beric is causing to the Lannisters is there's probably dozens prior to meeting the Brotherhood without banners. And, the size of his force is unknown, and he keeps disappearing back into the woods and things like this. But keep in mind that through a Game of Thrones and a Clash of Kings, he is not like Robin Hood. He is not out there robbing from the rich and giving to the poor in some sort of social justice kind of aspect. He is targeting the fucking Lannisters. That is the clear thing he's doing. It is just he might as well be an extension of Robb Stark through a Clash of Kings. There is no reference to him being loved by the people and bringing justice and mentioning this like band of merry men or anything like that. It is not that. But then a Storm of Swords happens. Now, I will say with a Storm of Swords, right from the get-go, we are introduced to not just Beric and the Brotherhood without banners that Arya eventually runs into, but we are introduced to Ulmer of the Kingswood very early on. Like Ulmer, I think where does Ulmer get introduced? Like Sam 2 probably? Yeah, Sam 2. All of a sudden there's this Ulmer character. And Sam and the whole Night's Watch act like Ulmer's been there the whole fucking time, and that everybody knows his stories. Ulmer, of course, fucking Ulmer of the Kingswood. He's been there the whole goddamn time. Well, the Kingswood Brotherhood is invented at this point, and the Kingswood Brotherhood is invented for the sole purpose of being a previous version of the Brotherhood without banners. That is clearly it. And you've got literally the Kingswood and a bunch of bandits in the Kingswood robbing people, just like the Robin Hood is in the King's Forest, the Sherwood Forest, and robbing people. And so you've got immediately this other band at the same time, a previous Robin Hood band, and then the Brotherhood without banners band. And the parallels between the two bands, it's not subtle. It's mentioned all the time, that all these two bands are so similar. You have Merrick, Merritt Frey, like talking about it at the end in the epilogue and such. And this goes into In A Feast for Crows. Jamie starts making the thoughts about, the way we beat the Kingswood Brotherhood was this way. So if we did the same sort of thing with the Brotherhood without banners, we could win in that sense. So at the same time as George decides that the Brotherhood without banners is a stand-in for Robin Hood, he invents the Kingswood Brotherhood as another stand-in for the Robin Hood at the same time. Keep in mind, Barrick's band and what he was doing prior to A Storm of Swords had nothing to do with that. It was they were just attacking the Lannisters. Interesting and all. But once you get into A Storm of Swords, and as much as I joke about A Storm of Swords being quick and sloppy and things like this, there are aspects of A Storm of Swords that I think are absolutely genius. And I think that when the Hound and Arya finally meet Beric Dondarrion and they have their conversation about what the Brotherhood without banners is, and the Hound just step by step morally breaks them to pieces. Like, what the fuck do you guys stand for? Boom, boom, boom. As the Hound being the ultimate cynic, crushing them. Is fascinating. And I think it only works when you start thinking about it in terms of what Robin Hood is, as well. Because you start saying, like, what does Robin Hood mean thematically? Like, Robin Hood exists where he is the hero, but he is breaking the law. So clearly, but he is the moral character, right? He is stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. So clearly there is morality on Robin Hood's side. So morality and law do not equal each other. And this is something that's hard for even today people to grasp. But certainly long ago, like when you're talking about what is a knight doing? Well, a knight is serving the king. And there's nothing more moral than a knight. Well, what happens when the law and the king is not right? What if they're doing wrong? And in Robin Hood's case, the king is gone, right? The king has gone to the east to fight in the Crusades, and his brother is unjustly ruling in the stead, right? With the Brotherhood without banners, Robert is dead. But they still are fighting for Robert. Robin Hood is still kind of fighting for Richard of Lionheart, but he's not there. And so they do try to have it both ways, right? Both Robin Hood and the Brotherhood without banners. They're trying to invent their own morality. They're trying to construct their own morality. Something based on, doing right by people, justice. But what is justice? What is justice? And they're trying to do the same. Oh, we're King's men, we're Robert's men, but Robert's dead. And also, the Hound puts in Robert wouldn't have fucking cared about what you fucking did. If you couldn't fuck it, or I think Robert, the Hound's takedown. Oh my God, it's so fucking good. I love it. this is like some of George's best writing. It's just if I can here, I'll bring some of it up because I think he says here. Robert's the king of the worms now. That's why you're down in the earth to keep court with for him. The king's dead, but we're still king's men. The royal banner we bore was lost at the Mummer's Ford when your brother's butchers fell upon it. Robert is slain, but the realm remains, and we defend her. Her? Is she your mother, Dondarrion, or your whore? Rocks and trees. That's what the realm is made of. Do rocks need defending? Robert wouldn't have thought so. If you couldn't fuck it, fight it, or drink it, it bored him. And so would you brave companions. The fucking Hound is fucking genius in that chapter. I think it's one of my favorite chapters of all time. And so, but nonetheless, the Hound is the first to sort of break down that, yes, the Brotherhood without banners, Robin Hood as well, their right to seek morality outside of the king. But if you don't have some sort of like, actual code on like what's going on to some degree, it's going to fall apart. And that is the Brotherhood without banners, like, main problem, is that they're looking for justice, but they haven't really defined what justice is. And so eventually, when Beric transitions out for Maid Marian with Catelyn, by the way, the characters are very clearly that Beric is Robin Hood, Thoros of Myr is Friar Tuck, and the sometimes lover of Robin Hood, Beric Dondarrion, is Lady Stoneheart. Maid Marian comes in. This transition happens, and they're not sure what justice is, and so it somehow becomes revenge because they don't really have a good grasp on what exactly their moral code is. They were moving away from objective morality. They're moving away from like morality based on either nation state or on personality. Like, keep in mind that like simple moral codes are like, I'm just going to do whatever the king does. Whatever the king does is moral. Whatever the president does is moral. Whatever America tells me to do is, whatever my orders are, that's morality. I'm going to phone it in. That's knighthood. Keep in mind, that's Kingsguard. All right. That's when you don't have to think and you're just following somebody else's orders. Whatever they do is right. That's the old system. They're right in rejecting that, in that they need to find their own moral code. But they fail to really piece it together. What does it mean? They're not really getting to something like, say, utilitarianism or something, or secular humanism, okay? They're not really getting to like the point of like, well, let's try to help the most people and bring about the least amount of suffering. They haven't figured that out. And so they just kind of like, we're out for justice. Well, what the fuck is justice? And then justice quickly becomes vengeance. Eye for an eye. And so I think it's, as Fast as Storm was written, I think that it's one of the best aspects of it is the Brotherhood without banners and this question of what is morality. It then transitions into Brienne and Jaime's story, Brienne's story, and her quest in A Feast for Crows, which I think is one of the most beautifully written parts of the later books, is the Brienne story. Now, with regards to, by the way, on one last thing on the Brotherhood, because I've just been rambling. When I first did theories on the Brotherhood, I don't think I was very focused on the inner meanings of what the Brotherhood represents with regards to like philosophy and morality and things and history and, the purpose of kings and law and justice. But I was more focused on are they Aegon supporters? Which clearly, when you actually get to, say, like the Aegon cause in the Arion chapters, like invading, they do make a lot of parallels to the Brotherhood Without Banners. And one could say that, like, okay, Robin Hood was sitting there waiting for Richard the Lionheart's return, and so he's treading water on his moral compass hoping for a king to come back in that he can just fucking follow and not think about morality again. And that may be still the future of the Brotherhood Without Banners. The Brotherhood Without Banners may join the Aegon cause, in the same sense that, like, that's the ending of Robin Hood, right? Like the king comes back and pardons Robin, and that's it. But of course, there's still those lingering moral questions, like what is morality? What is morality? What is being a true knight, and things like that. And so it's not that I think I was necessarily wrong on those early thoughts about that they could be Aegon supporters. I don't think George R. R. Martin had an idea about Aegon when he was writing A Storm of Swords, but he had the idea that there was going to be a returning monarch that would oppose Daenerys by that point. He didn't know it was going to be specifically Aegon, but he definitely planted seeds that there were going to be other Targaryen claimants. So it's I may be right on that, but I do think that my early analysis of the Brotherhood Without Banners was woefully inadequate by not talking about who they kind of represent, like morally and thematically and things like that. Anyway, I am sorry for my rambling about the Brotherhood Without Banners. There's so much about them. I didn't even get into like the Kingswood Brotherhood that much, but as I say, the Kingswood Brotherhood are just the Brotherhood Without Banners. That's all they are. They're just Robin Hood. They're the same thing. But yes. All right. Let's go on. Was Benjen part of the they that found Ned at the Tower of Joy? Rob's birth gives him of Winterfell. He was close with Leah. Takes the Black soon after. Maybe new. I'm trying to, like, logistically, this just could not happen. So we don't know what Benjen was doing during the war. Most people say, well, Stark has to be in Winterfell, so I guess he was in Winterfell, kind of thing. George didn't really come up with that, a Stark must be in Winterfell thing, until kind of later on. So it's not really like a thing, but nonetheless, like, I mean, it's fine, but like Benjen, the thing is one, I think he's young. I think he's very young at this point. I mean, keep in mind that, like, Ned is only, what, 18 or 20? Ned during the war is 20. So Benjen, you got to remember that, like, underneath that there's Lyanna, and then underneath that is Benjen. So Benjen is like, you might be of fighting age. I don't think they ever give Benjen's age. But he's at least, we never get Benjen's age, but like, he might be a fighting age, but he's barely a fighting age, right? And then we never hear about Benjen being in any of the battles. We don't hear him being south of the neck or anything like that. Um, the you know what, like, we don't hear about him participating in the battle, like with the King's Guard, what he's just standing back, like holding his dick. Um, I think that they might be like, you could argue that there's some sort of servants or squires or porters or something that went with them, because no one, seven lords don't just ride off into the mountains of Dorne for no fucking, like, without anybody else. Like, it's just, I think, like, in the end, the they has to be some sort of like servants, but then the servants are fucking liabilities for, um, for seeing shit. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he comes out with a baby and everybody's like, oh, a baby. Well, we don't know who the baby is. It's just all, um, but again, yeah, it's liabilities as well. I mean, making sense of the Tower of Joy is just a fucking circle. Okay, Tower of Joy doesn't make sense. Can we just fucking like admit that the Tower of Joy will never fucking make sense? It was thrown in there really early on in a fantasy book, and let's like the logistics of actually riding out to the mountains of Dorne and then somebody living in a tower in the middle of fucking nowhere and then having a battle and then taking a baby out of there. Like, none of that fucking makes sense. Like, none of it. So let's just like admit that just like this is stupid. But no, I don't think that, like, Benjen being there, it's just, we never hear about anything else with him of him doing anything like that. And later on, fans are like, well, Stark has to be in Winterfell, so I guess he was up there. So it's, but I don't know. I don't know if taking the black really keeps any secrets. I understand it's like, oh, well, he takes the black after that. Well, okay, I mean, he can still talk if he's on the wall. In fact, that's all people do. Like, when people are in military situations, is sit around shooting the shit. It's a lot of a lot of boredom. So people have brought this up, that there's some sort of secret that drove Benjen to the wall and things like that. I don't think so. I think it's just, there was north of the wall shit that you have to be invested in for Jon. Jon has to be invested in, and Benjen is that character. Like, that's it. I don't think there's any sort of secret backstory to Benjen. I just think he's a fucking character that exists for Jon to worry about. That's it. And for him to have a conversation on joining the Night's Watch. But it's like I say, like, him taking the black doesn't keep any secrets. It's in the Dreams of Ghosts and Indians was Robert, inspired by Robert Baratheon. Loving the book, PJ. Cheers from a fellow published author from Brazil. By the way, is Joshua just you? Well, I mean, Joshua's me, Key is me. I mean, they're both me. Most characters are just, you just kind of take aspects of yourself and you split them off. But yeah, Key and Joshua are both me. But Robert, if we're talking specifically about Robert from Dreams of Ghosts and Indians, Robert was very much a real person. Nearly all of the things that happen with Robert are nonfiction. Like, the Robert portion of the story is almost completely nonfiction. I really knew a guy named Robert who was exactly fucking like that. He was quite a fucking character. Like, one of the most ridiculous guys, but also like one of the most introspective and thoughtful and caring guys I've ever met too. Weirdly, I mean, did not see the world the same way I did, but like, you know, like really like legitimately thought that like visiting sex workers was charity. Like he was giving them work, and you know, that like he was a real man. I mean, last I heard, he was like, you know, he got married and had another set of kids. But he was definitely a real. I mean, all of you, if you haven't bought my book, The Dreams of Ghosts and Indians, I highly recommend it. Yes, Robert is straight up real man. I don't know if he's alive today. I mean, who knows if he's alive today. Why was Garland married before Willis? Is it possible he married for love? Could it have been a shotgun wedding like Rob and Jane? Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that like Willis, I mean, it's weird because obviously Willis is going to inherit Highgarden, and like there should be a line of suitors out the door for him. But also in Ice and Fire, we've kind of established that cripples and are, you get this like down, you know, like hit. You know, this idea that like, oh, there wouldn't be people for Tyrion to marry, and people taking certain offerings as insults because Tyrion was a dwarf. But it's like, no, there's plenty of people that are going to be willing to fucking marry like Tyrion just for the status and just for the alliance. Plus, it's just like, like, if you know, if you're talking about your third or fourth daughter, like who fucking cares? Let's, you know, like send it off. But yeah, why wasn't Willis married when Garland was? I mean, the real answer is that George R. Martin is waiting on the character of Willis. Willis seems like an interesting character, and George isn't ready to write him yet, while Garland was pretty straightforward. There's nothing kind of special about Garland, right? Like he's just a regular Joe Knight, believes in the system kind of like a guy, right? There's nothing. Willis is the one that's kind of interesting. Willis is the one that, you know, was wronged and crippled, and yet was communicating with the man who crippled him and seemed to have a friendship with him. He's the curious one who's no longer like into the regular things that you're supposed to be into in the world of Ice and Fire, like fighting and jousting anymore, you know, because of his condition. So I think, you know, it being an interesting character, he was not, George wasn't ready to write about him yet because of that. But it's hard to believe. I mean, realistically, like, you know, would Willis not go to the king's wedding? Like the king's wedding, like it seems almost like unrealistic, right? At that point, that like, okay, my sister is marrying the fucking king, and I'm not gonna fucking go to King's Landing and go to this wedding? Like, really? Like, you know, like George was just almost like purposely keeping this character out when everything said that he should be there. You know, kind of ridiculous that that Willis has not been brought into the story yet, all things considered. But I mean, if you're looking for some sort of logical in-story kind of thing, it's just that Willis had other interests. He wasn't ready yet. People were a little. It was harder to 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 think about these marriages when Willis was crippled. It might also be that no, that's the thing is I'm like thinking about like Mace Tyrell. Willis is Willis is somewhere in his mid-20s. So why hadn't he been married? It's true that it's because it's like you're not expecting, like one could argue that okay, like once Robert dies and the realm goes into chaos and the Tyrells see opportunity to rise, like maybe you'd put off Willis's marriage then to see like where you end up, because then it depends on like who you're gonna end up marrying. But like it's but you couldn't predict all of that. The Tyrells weren't predicting all of that. So I mean, if you want to be super conspiratorial, it's like, well, Willis is being kept single for Daenerys, but clearly like not, because there was already discussions of him marrying Cersei and him marrying Sansa. So like, there's clearly not a conspiracy to keep him single for Daenerys. It's just because George needed him to be. That's it. He wasn't ready to be put into the story yet, and he needed to be single for like Sansa and things like that. He's single because he needed to be for plot convenience. That's essentially the end of it. I want to check. Let me see Appendix, A Game of Thrones here to see if he, like, when he's established. So he is not even, okay, so he's established as a character in the appendix of A Game of Thrones. But Willis, Garland, and Loras, well, Loras is obviously in the Game of Thrones, but Willis and Garland, their marital status is not established. And so let me check out Clash of Kings. Once we get to a Clash of Kings, it's still not. Garland's still not established. So yeah. He was single because Sansa, they needed him to be single for the Sansa plot. What would it take to convince you to bring Jon back for real in the fanfic? I mean, I would have to be convinced that it'd be worth the story. Like, I think when I think of the interesting things that are happening as Jon as Ghost, and all of the interesting things that can happen there, then I'd have to like say, okay, how does it become more interesting that he's no longer Ghost? Like, there's a lot of interesting things that can happen as Ghost, but then also like, why do we need Jon? Like, what is he gonna do for us? Like, do we have the time to deal with Jon? Because that's the big thing. It's just, do we have the time? There's a lot of characters to get to, and you get to the point where you're just kind of, you get to the point where, yeah, it's just like, there's so little time for each character where I'm just like, oh my God, you want to give how much time to Jon Snow's story? Like, um, we've already got all these other northern characters. We've got Davos, we've got Mel, we've got Asha, we've got Theon, and we've got Bran. We've got all these people, all these POVs just for the North. It's really tough. Just you gotta make some moves. It's gotta be. I'd have to have a really convincing argument that this really cool story would happen with Jon. That's the thing. Oh, hey, Preston, loved your book. Give it a 4 out of 5 on Amazon. So scores stay looking natural. But it's 100%. 5 out of 5. Thank you. Thank you. I told you the one thing that always pissed me off is that even before the book came out, somebody gave me a 2 out of 5. And gave this gave this review that said I really respect Preston as a YouTuber, but this writing is just not up to par. And you're like, oh my God, like you put in that first part so people would think that this was like a real review, like from someone who is a fan of mine, when it's clearly like somebody that was trying to bash me. Oh, yeah. Barrack is a horrible person. I guess I'm trying to the accusations against the Hound are ridiculous. Like, why did you pull this guy in to like accuse him of his brother's crimes? They go on and on about his brother's crimes, and he's like, what the fuck? Like, it was only a coincidence that Arya's there to be like, what about Micah? He's like, oh, okay, you got something on him there. But like, going through and being like, all the people that the Mountain killed, like, what are you fucking doing? Like, what are you fucking doing? Not a single person was like, yeah, guys, that was his brother. That was his brother. Catelyn Stark was involved in the imprisonment of both Jaime and Tyrion. Can you imagine Lady Stoneheart ever meeting and capturing Cersei? Huh. I mean, she... I mean, it would be very interesting. Like Cersei meeting Lady Stoneheart would be one of the weirdest fucking scenes in the world. Like what would she even? How would she even like process it? I'm kind of reminded of the show at that point where Cersei kind of, they open the box and the zombie comes running at her, and you think that like Cersei's going to change in her mind, and then she doesn't. You're like, oh, the supernatural, because at that point, like Cersei hasn't really seen the supernatural. I mean, other than the mountain. But it doesn't change her at all. So it might be like that too. She sees Lady Catelyn and she's just she's not impressed. She's like, oh, you came back from the dead. Am I supposed to be scared by you? Like what? Or what? The Jaime and Tyrion are kind of funny because there is an interview with both of them on their part in the obviously pushing Bran from the tower and then the cat's paw. But you'd have to be like, well, what does Cersei and Cat have to talk about? Because at that point, like, Cersei had kind of, Cersei was innocent in both of those situations. As not innocent, as horrible as Cersei was, it's not that like Cersei asked Jaime to push her from the tower. She was like, he saw, okay, and then Jaime pushed Bran from the tower. And then Cersei was like, you idiot. Well, why the fuck did you do that? Um, and so and Catelyn already knows all that information because Jaime revealed it at the end of the Clash of Kings. And then the Catspaw stuff, like that was never solved for Cat, but Cersei doesn't really know I mean, Jaime mentions like, "Hey, did you know that it was actually Joffrey?" And Cersei's like, "Huh?" Like, she might be the one to, she might be the one to like. I heard it was actually my son, but my son's dead. So that's that. I mean, only in that sense, like that, the imprisonment of Jaime and Tyrion lead to the resolution of those plots. Cersei would be the final person to communicate to her that actually, the Catspaw might have been Joffrey, but looks like Lady Catelyn's going to get um, Jaime again. So it doesn't, she's got him to communicate that information to her. So, yeah, but yeah, like, what do you talk about? What do you talk about? It's funny because the show had them have a bunch of scenes together because they wanted to give Cersei more screen time in those early seasons. But it's but they tried to give him some things. They talked about babies and shit. um Woke outlaws destroyed by facts and logic. Um, is Wex one of Varys's little birds? This comes up in the fandom quite a bit. This idea that, well, Wex is tongueless and he's really, really smart, smarter than he has any right to be, as George likes to say. And so could Wex be an old little bird that has moved on with his life and is now and I would say that, like, as cool and interesting as that would be, and it doesn't really square with where we know little birds come from, right? Little birds are supposed to be something that Varys is ordering from Illyrio. So whatever Illyrio is doing, like, often Pentos is what's creating little birds and getting those little birds to King's Landing. If Varys himself had the power, and Varys has a lot of power and he's got money and power, like, and supposedly connections and a network of spies and all this shit, you'd think that he could get little birds from the population of King's Landing. But it seems a little out of the way that Wex Pike, who is a bastard from the Iron Islands, would somehow be picked up, created by Illyrio, get funneled to King's Landing, live his life as a little bird, and then make it back to the Iron Islands. Or is he not originally from the Iron Islands? Like, he's actually from Pentos, and that he was a little bird, and then somehow he ended up on the Iron Islands and adopted by Botley, right? Because he's Botley's bastard, isn't he? Not Christopher, but right. Wex is supposedly, he's not Tris Botley's. It's like, so Wayne's cousin. Swain has a cousin named Sargon, half brother, and who has a bastard son, and that He's just kind of like taken on as a squire. Such randomness. Like George created like this character of Lucamore Botley as well. Like why? Why did he create Lucamore Botley? Just threw him in the appendix. Okay. All right. Okay. So, I mean, it's not that there aren't interesting parallels there, but like, it's just one of those situations where like George likes to do the same things over and over again, like having one-eyed characters, or, people that have replaced their eyes with some sort of stone or something, just something that he kind of has some go-to things that he does a lot in his stories. So it's like, oh, it's an albino. Oh, well, is that an albino? Is that albino related to this albino and this albino? No, he just like George R. R. Martin just fucking loves albinos. Okay. He's gonna throw in some fucking albinos in his story. Okay. So you just prepare yourself for some albinos. It's the same with like tongueless people. Like, okay, yeah, well, yeah, Wex is mute. Ilan Payne doesn't have a tongue. Little Birds. The dusky woman. We got a whole bunch. We got a whole bunch of all of Euron's mutes on his ship. Things like that. Had Wex Pike arrived a little bit later, everyone would be like, oh my God, he's one of Euron's mutes. He's actually Euron's child, not really Sargon's child. Hi, Preston. Are there any of your old theories that you no longer think are true? It'd be interesting to see you react to some of your old videos. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think R plus L equals D. Not that I don't think that like the text better supports R plus L equals D. The text absolutely better supports R plus L equals D. But like, it's just like after the show does stuff, I'm just like, it's fine. Like it's probably what this, George told people, like, it's fine. There's a lot of little things like that where you're like, okay, there's stuff that the text supports and there's stuff that like actually happened, right? Because George makes a lot of fucking mistakes. So like you go through and you say, okay, is there any fucking textual support for Olenna Tyrell having murdered Joffrey? Yeah, there's some. She like fiddled with the nets, and then we've got the testimony of Littlefinger, right? Does that plot make any fucking sense at all? No, it makes no fucking goddamn sense. The murder of Joffrey is the dumbest fucking thing I can possibly imagine. Like, why would anyone be like, you know what we need to do? We need to kill Joffrey. You know what we should do is we should hand fucking poison to fucking drunk Dantos to then hand to a fucking 13-year-old girl. I'm sorry. Let's go back a little. I'm sorry. Let's team up with fucking Littlefinger to hire a fucking drunk to then pass poison to a fucking 13-year-old girl so she can put it in her hairnet so I can fucking take it out of the hairnet to poison a cup in the fucking first place. Why did I just fucking bring the poison in the first place? Why did I fucking need Littlefinger and fucking Dantos and fucking Sansa? I could have just fucking walked in with the fucking poison and done it myself. Like, it's the dumbest fucking plot. It's so fucking dumb. Like, does the like, logically speaking, would that ever fucking happen? No. But the show did it. Storm of Swords were written really fucking fast. George was just fucking writing, and even though he spent all his time on Sandor's speech to Beric, he spent all his time making that fucking rock, and then he's just like, I'm just gonna fucking phone this shit in. because that fucking that poison scheme is idiotic. It's fucking idiotic. Okay. But, you know, it's like one of those things. Like I can do, and I think Purple Wedding is a fucking great video. I think it's a fucking great fucking video. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever created. It very logically like pieces it all together that it just doesn't fucking make sense that Alina Tyrell is the killer. But then again, they fucking did it in the show. And George wrote that book really fucking fast. So, you know, it's these little things where you're like, and then not that George can't like change his mind and change, you know, he recognizes he does something dumb and then he writes back. Like, in A Storm of Swords, he's writing people shooting arrows to the top of the fucking wall. Okay. That is fucking stupid. Okay. No one is shooting arrows 700 feet in the air and hitting people. Okay. That is the dumbest thing in the world. And so, and the next, he realizes that himself. And then in the next book, he's like, yeah, the wind was taking arrows. It was the wind. Oh, okay. Well, you know, you're being dumb when you wrote it. And then now you're trying to cover for it. It's fine. I mean, he might like, if he ever comes out with another book, he might do that with the Alina Tyrell like murder plot. But, you know, there's a lot of these situations where it's like, okay, did George intend this? Was this what he thought? Was that a really bad idea? Yes. But like, so, you know, keep in mind that like, when I did a lot of my videos back in the day, it's like I was coming out of this belief that like George R. Martin was near flawless and that he would never write something idiotic and he would never write something messy. And he has to have a plan that's going to work all the way through, and he has everything worked out. And now I kind of realize that like, okay, look, George R. Martin's a genius, but he's not that much of a fucking genius, you know? Like, he's still a human being. So there's a lot of like questioning of like, okay, George fucked up. Can George just fuck up? Like, things can be fucked up. And so I think a lot of criticism of my theory videos is that like Preston Jacobs will hyperfixate on a George R. Martin mistake, an honest fucking mistake, and come up with a theory on why that mistake is there. And it's like, yeah, it's probably pretty true. It doesn't make any sense that all of the world follows AC as a time marker. It seems like the doom of Valyria is more significant for the whole planet. Oh. Here's the thing. We're talking about Aegon's conquest. I don't think there's any evidence that anyone in Essos uses Westerosi time. You know, like keep in mind that, you know, in our world, you know, obviously in the West, we use the birth of Christ as a marker. But you know, the Muslims use the Constitution of Medina. I forget what the Jewish calendar uses. Even in small places like Taiwan, on their official receipts, they use years from the beginning, from the founding of the Republic of China, and things like that. So it's not necessarily like even universal in our world. And we all exist oblivious to like, oh, really? In these other places, they use different year markers? Well, yeah, that's fine. So I don't think I've ever heard anyone use a year marker. In fact, there's no year markers in A Song of Ice and Fire. There's years in Fire and Blood and in the World of Ice and Fire. But there's no one ever says like, oh, it's in 176 AC, no one ever calls it the Council of 101 in the regular Song of Ice and Fire like timeline. The closest we get is Joffrey saying that it's been 3 centuries since Aegon's landing. Like that's the closest we get. So no, it's so I don't even know if, even though you could argue that maesters are using it, I don't know if outside of maesters anyone is very aware of it. You've got the Endworlders in A Clash of Kings, and Tyrion is like, well, it's almost 3 centuries since Aegon's conquest. And so you have those ones, and you have Joffrey mentioning that, like, yeah, it's a new century, you know. So yeah, Joffrey says it's a new century. So I suppose they're at least aware of that. They're at least aware that a year is turning or something like that. But there's never any other point where someone's like 121 or something. And certainly not Nissos. Like no one does it Nissos at all. So you never know. Like it may be that Nissos, they do use the Doom of Valyria as their marker or something else. It's just never mentioned. Now I'm trying to think of like different cultures that I knew of before people started using, the birth of Christ. When you read Roman history, when they use time, they will say when they're talking about the Republic, they'll say, oh, well, during the consulship of, Marcus Gaius Septimus or whatever. And then you're just kind of supposed to know, like, even though, keep in mind that they changed consuls every 6 months. So you kind of have to know, like, who was consul? Like, what? And then they start saying, like, during the 5th year of Nero's reign. And then you've got to be like, well, how long did he reign? They would have to have charts and shit. The Greeks they would say during like the second year after the 17th Olympiad, like Olympic Games. So they would use the Olympic Games as like markers, and then say 2 years after that they had Olympic Games and that kind of stuff. So people exist doing different time stuff. We haven't heard about it. We haven't heard about what they use. But I think it should probably it should probably come up. Someone should mention it at some point. I believe Thoros is telling the truth about Beric giving his life for Stoneheart. It's an interesting question about that. Because obviously there's the question of like, who woke Catelyn up? Was it Nymeria or was it Beric? Thoros clearly thinks it was Beric. But there is this scene of like the wolf pulling her out of the river and being like, wake up, wake up, wake up. I don't understand why Beric would feel the need to kiss Catelyn. I guess he just looked at her and said, oh, this is injustice, and I'm here to bring justice or something, and justice would be her living again or something strange like that. There's also the idea that Beric is still alive and that he's still leading the other band. I don't know, According to Thoros, he just passed it on, which is kind of, why are people kissing dead bodies that have been rotting 3 days? Obviously, you get these Jesus references with all of this, like Catelyn is dead 3 days and then rises again, things like that. But Um, Preston loving the book. Would you consider Joshua and Key stand-ins for your worldview? Um, Both Joshua and Key are probably slightly more cynical than I am, and they're much more searching than I am. They're definitely younger versions of me. Um, but yeah, they've got Key obviously Key is obviously a much more confident character than Joshua. Joshua is obviously insecure, while Key is just much more sure of herself. Key is obviously much more angry, um, and than Joshua. Joshua is a little more lost and searching than Key. Key is more, Key is more about living life to the full enjoyment than Joshua, who is more wandering. But yeah, I don't know if their worldviews are are unknown and searching, and they're trying to figure it out. Right? That's what both of them are. Um, and I'm older, so I have a little more experience and coming to terms with things, or maybe being distracted by life. When you're young, you have a little more idle time to consider things. Um, but but yeah, I mean, both of them are. I mean, both Joshua and Key are atheists. Like that's, I'm an atheist. Both of them, like they wanna. They're trying to figure things out. I'm still trying to figure things out to a degree. Joshua and Key are much more searching because they're younger characters than I am. But yeah, um they meet a lot of characters. I think they meet a lot of characters who share pieces of my worldview with them, and um, they're often very resistant and cynical about it. And so, but there's a lot of I'm just thinking of there's this when Key meets Sakui, the girl in Sri Lanka. Like Sakui has some very like positive worldviews, which I do fundamentally believe. But of course, Key is tearing them apart, just like my own mind would tear those positive opinions apart. Like Sakui's like ideas are definitely my ideas and like things I believe or want to believe. And is there to Key is there to tear them apart. But it's uh, uh, um will Theon be the one to feed Ramsay to his dogs? So honestly, I don't know um if like how one, I don't know how George really wants to end Stannis versus Ramsay. Like there's definitely strong elements of like that Stannis is going to win the Battle of Ice. Why set up him being in this incredibly dire situation only for him to die? Like that's just not how stories work. You don't set him up. You don't have him march for months and fucking months and have him be in the worst situation ever to just have them all fucking die. Um, like the show did. Uh, but at the same time, there is that element. There is like Stannis being arrogant and being like, why should I fear fucking Ramsay? And you're like, oh God. So now it can go both ways, right? It can go both ways. Ramsay might kill Stannis. As disappointing as that is. But this idea of like the justice of Ramsay being fed to dogs that Sansa gets in the show, that, I don't know, that it feels so Hollywood to me. Like it's one of my least favorite, like my least favorite parts of Andor season 2, which Andor season 2 is great, but like there's the fucking like and there's Andor and Bix walking away from the building and having it explode and smirking kind of fucking shit. And it's like, well, oh wait, didn't Arya walk out of the twins after poisoning everybody and killing with a smirk? Like, didn't she do that too? And didn't Sansa walk away from feeding Ramsay to the Hound, like with a smirk? Like, it's so fucking cliche to have the just desserts for the villain and then the hero walk away, not looking back with a smirk. Like, it's just so fucking cliche. No way George would do it like that. It's just not his style. It's just not his style. You know, like even when he has something where somebody is ironically killed, like Tywin. Okay, Tywin is ironically killed, right? He's not killed gloriously in battle. He's killed on the toilet, and he didn't shit gold. He got your fucking yuck yuck joke. Ironically killed. But even that situation, like Tyrion is haunted by this motherfucking killing, and it twists him for an entire book. A glorious, I mean, I guess I'm like, Jon cutting off Janos Slynt's head is maybe the closest you get to that kind of stuff. Like, I don't even know if Jon was even aware of like what Janos Slynt did. So it's I don't know. Feeding Ramsay to his own dogs, like it seems a little, yeah, as I say, fan servicey for George. George doesn't like to make us happy. Does Tommen have a male heir? Well, I would think that it would be Estermont, but keep in mind that like with Primo, like, so in the world of Ice and Fire, George has even brought this up in Fire and Blood, that they're not going on systems of just primogeniture, and they're not going on systems of proximity. They're trying to figure out both at once. So proximity is like proximity to the closeness of one to the heir. So for instance, if a person is king and he's got like a great grandson, that's 4 generations down. And so while his brother is, and say the son is dead and the grandson is dead, so you just have a great grandson, but you also have this brother. The brother is closer in proximity in inheritance, and therefore the idea would be like proximity would can be given heir. While primogeniture, you go down the line, right, and figure it out that way. And so they're kind of piecing things together on both. They don't really have a hard and fast rule. Like, yeah, it's pretty clear. Like everybody kind of knows that like when it's an eldest son, you'd figure it out. But then it starts getting crazier when it's like, well, wait a minute, like, is it going to be your granddaughter or your brother? Like, we don't know, so it gets confusing quite quickly. So, but nonetheless, if you're looking at the Tommen's male heir would be Stannis, but Stannis is disinherited, and Shireen is disinherited. Renly is dead. So if you go past that, you've then got Okay, hold on just a second. So we'd go past, once the Baratheons are out, then we have to go to like House Estermont, and then there's the question of like, well, who then, at this point, like when you go like, okay, there would be a claimant essentially, like people would come forward and make a claim, and then someone would have to figure it out. So you'd kind of say, okay, would it be like Cassana Estermont, or would you go to like Cersei's family and start like searching through the mother's family? And there'd be a discussion, and there'd be claimants coming forward, and then you try to figure it out. But like it wouldn't even necessarily be Cersei. Like you could be like, well, Cersei's brother. Oh, well, not Tyrion, because Tyrion's disinherited. Would it be Jaime? Well, he's Kingsguard. Okay. Do we go to Cersei's cousin? Like, honestly speaking, like some of these random Lannisters, and some of these random Estermonts would have claims, based on like the family lineages and stuff. But it's yeah, you'd probably disinherit the Florence and things like that. So it becomes a big argument, is essentially the answer. Like, yes, he might have a male heir. It's probably either a Lannister or an Estermont, but there'd be a lot of argument about it, and you'd have to figure out. So, in the show, when it's given to like Cersei, that's not actually that weird. It's not that weird that Cersei got it, because it's just, but there'd be at least an argument and a discussion over it. Okay. Why did Joshua steal Yoris's lighter? This is Dreams of Ghosts and Indians. Joshua did not steal Yoris's lighter. Yoris's lighter ended up in Joshua's bag. We're in Joshua's head, and Joshua is confused that Yoris's lighter ends up with him. But it is that is a big mystery of the story. Have you ever seen the Future of Mapping of Thrones series by Vologda Mapping? They use the show's timeline, but it's an interesting watch. Georgian at times. Really? Let me see this. Huh. Oh my. This is really weird. Because this is just like, here, let me put this up here. So he has like a map of the world, and then he has like text of the year. And he kind of says that like, okay, as a reward of like various events that would happen, as a reward for their role in the Great War, Queen Sansa gifts the last hearth and its holdings to the Night's Watch. Carhold is given to House Mazin in reward for its alliance in the Battle of the Bastards. and then you can go forward. And it's like, the Iron Fleet sails into Blackwater Bay to join the Bravosi without warning. They attack their supposed allies in a naval blockade. The following Westeros came to remember as the Dothraki genocide. It's like, oh my god, this like goes in. It just, all right, let's just keep going. Oh my god. The Mazavian Wars. In the following the Battle of Harrenhal, the Westerosi are once again defeated. The Mazavians push onward to Salt Pans and the Bay of Crabs. Like, oh my god, like what? It's just on top of this, when the fifth or so of the Masavians see the winged shadow fly over the island, they raise their white flag and surrender. Like, what? Like, it is just a listing of, fictional events that could happen. Like, purely in a world building kind of sense. Like, well, this is what's going to happen next. This is what's going to happen next. That's crazy. That's weird. It's very weird. Fun, but let's see here. Fun. I just don't know what, I mean, it's fun. I just don't know what I'd get out of it. Like, because obviously the story is about characters we know. I think it's one of the reasons I don't like Fire and Blood very much, because it's like, why should I care about these characters? Well, they have similar names to people. They have similar names to people that you do know, and you're hearing about their events very quickly without any details, so that you can't actually like connect or empathize with any of them. But there was a character named Sam Tarly like 200 years ago, and he did something else, and you're supposed to care because his name is Sam Tarly. Okay. But man, the amount of like time and effort on that is very funny. Let's try to. Could dying person 1 greater than dog person 2? Dog person 1? Is this a meme I don't know? Could dying person 1, dog person 2? Could dying person 1 lead to dog person 2, lead to dog person 1, lead to person 2? I'll need more explanation on this, man. Are we talking about like dogs getting eaten by Ramsay? Ramsay's dogs eating people? Becoming... Is that, how like Kira becomes the dog? So Kira becomes a dog who becomes another dog. Like, could you be named after a dead dog? Will there be an audiobook? Probably eventually. I mean, I did once record it in an earlier draft. But it's one of those things where I kind of like need the time and a good recording area. My recording area here isn't great. I mean, maybe, I was thinking about doing it. I'm back in America for a week in August, so I have better studio there. I may do it there and then, but I know people have been asking for the audiobook for a while. because that's how a lot of people consume their media. And so people have been asking me for a while, like, can you do the reading for the Dreams of Ghosts and Indians? It's hard. It's harder even than Ice and Fire, just because there's like so many foreign accents and female characters, and so it's but yeah, I'll eventually going to do it. George loves albinos. Call it a melty boner. That's kind of funny. I mean, it definitely, obviously comes from Elric, but it's like it doesn't even. It's not even Ice and Fire. Like, doesn't even start. Like, there's stuff that he does. There's so many albinos that appear in George's work prior to even Ice and Fire. But I mean, just in Ice and Fire, we've got what? Bloodraven, Ghost, the Ghost of High Heart. You know, we've at least 3. Not to mention like people with perhaps albinism in their eyes. Am I forgetting any other albinos? Probably forgetting. But at least we've got 3. Who will lead the Brotherhood without banners after Lady Stoneheart? I don't think there will be a leader after Lady Stoneheart, but I think that Stoneheart, even once Stoneheart is killed, she's going to probably come back. Just like Beric keeps coming back. Did George even admit that he'd have the wall be half the size when he saw the scale model? Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely, he knows he made the wall too high. Speaking of Aegon, when and how will Dany find out in the fanfic? Oh, about Aegon. Man, it's going to take a while. I'm just like logically working it out. That because I mean, Dany will theoretically make it back to Meereen, realize her dragons are gone and they've been like taken by, you know, Quentyn and Victarion, and then will want to follow on. And then eventually she'll probably get to Volantis. And I guess in Volantis, you've got people that know about. No, they still knew about young Griff. So they must know. Like they must know. Like she must get suspicious at some point. Like once she makes it to Volantis, she can hear that the Golden Company had taken off from there, and everybody must be like, she must be suspicious that like, why would the Golden Company be following somebody? But there's still no one yet that knows it's Aegon at that point. Unless she runs into Illyrio. Maybe Illyrio would choose to meet her in Volantis and they would have a discussion. Or she would fly all the way up the fucking Pentos. But Illyrio could tell her. But I'm trying to think of anybody else that could communicate the information. I mean, Sam via glass candle. That's about it. But she may have to wait. She may have to wait until she gets to Westeros to find out about Aegon. Huh. Preston, don't go back on server X, kill Joff by trying to kill Tyrion and do R plus L equals J. I mean, I think certainly in the fanfic we're having the server X kill Joffrey by just because it's just like it's so silly. Like but gives R plus L equals D and B plus L equals J. I mean, I might be more into Danny being a dragon seed these days. As a cooler idea, you know. Yeah, giving dates like giving a map demystifies it. That's all. That's very true. That's very true. Plus, I think like George, wants to play loose with like when things are happening, stuff like that. Like even though we have a nice little timeline of where events are, like George clearly is not paying attention to that. Yeah, time is better calculated around events, natural occurrences. Yeah, I mean that's the fun of the definitely the fun of the comment. Oh, once the wall falls, how cool would it be that the fallen dead start awakening as a metaphor of the revenge of stupid wars? Sounds George-like. This is more like so in zombie movies, there's two types of the dead returning, right? There's people that are like bit by zombies and therefore they become zombies. And so like the magic of the zombie itself like spreads in a game of tag, in a game of like multiplication tag. But then there's Night of the Living Dead, where all the dead rise, right? Like it doesn't matter if you've been bitten by a zombie, you're still gonna rise. And I think that's how it works in The Walking Dead and in Fido and a few others. Like the like there's something in the whole air that causes all dead bodies to come back. So it'd be interesting, yeah, if it causes the dead to rise. I mean, I suppose that's what happens in the show, right? They go into the Stark crypts and the dead from the crypts start coming out and attacking them. I mean, the Night King has to like do his like move. He has to be like, everybody get up, raise the roof, and then all of a sudden like all the dead come up. But that's kind of what he does. So for him, it's like any dead, But I'm trying to think of like, are there any specific dead bodies lying around that that could rise up that we care about? Ned's bones, Nimble Dick climbing out of his grave. I mean, Egret's burned. Like a lot of people are burned, So it's you'd have to be like, are they climbing out of tombs? Is there a specific like place where bodies are just lying around where they're gonna start standing up? Yeah. Even in medieval Europe, it was still like X years of the reign of King whomever. Yeah. Okay. Oh, see the new Zero Day Attack trailer from last week, the Taiwan Invasion TV show that comes out in August. Are you and Carmine going to cover it? I've seen the 15-minute trailer for Zero Day. I haven't seen anyone recently. Like, first of all, that trailer's been out for like a year. I don't know. I mean, I could. It'd be interesting to watch. I'll have to tell my wife that it's like coming out. because she's the one that originally showed me the trailer. But essentially, it's this like very, very detailed, specific, supposedly very realistic portrayal of like what would happen if China invaded and how Taiwan would react. Of course, even based on the trailer, you're like, would it really would it be like that? Really? But so I haven't seen the new one from last week, but I saw like the 15-minute trailer from like over over a year ago. Jeez, it's amazing how long it's taken for this show to come out. It's really highly anticipated for the Taiwanese. But I'll check it out. But I'll see about it. Getting Carmine to cover stuff. It's not just me trying to get him to cover stuff. It's like him trying to get me to cover stuff. We have to twist each other's arms in order to watch the same thing. Like, can I get him to watch Ironheart? Do I want to watch Ironheart? It's like these little things like that. You're like, Kia's Preston's horny side. Joshua's Preston's angsty side. Both Kia and Joshua have some sex in the story. they each have their sex. Greetings from Argentina. Tyrion's definitely Targaryen. Boltons are turkey sandwiches. Well, Jackie has arrived. Why does everybody's usernames look weird, including mine? I uploaded a. I'm sorry. Every time I think it might be from like a new version of Ecamm. You know how they always like update shit, but yeah, everybody's like add an at today. Have you seen any of Michael Talks About Stuff theory videos, specifically those about others and Brandon the Builder? I have not seen anything about from Michael Talks About Stuff. I'm just trying to think about Brandon the Builder and the Wall and the others, and there's not too much you can even say. It's just that we're given very little information on it all. There's questions of whether or not like these legends are actually future and not past, and stuff like that. But we're given such little information about who Brand the Builder is and stuff like that. That it's really hard to say. Because isn't Brand the Builder is also supposed to have like founded Winterfell and stuff like that, and that doesn't check out if he's building the wall at the same time and helping to build Storm's End, and which is why even in the World of Ice and Fire, they're like, well, I guess Brand the Builder might be just many Brandons because everybody just fucking names their kid Brandon all over and over again. He built the wall, and then also he built Storm's End and raised Winterfell, and with the help of giants and the High Tower of Old Town and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's just impossible for one person to have done. Preston. Ah. All right. All right. Any purpose to a shy ever in the story? A shy, I mean, the purpose of a shy in the story is to have a ultimately exotic, mystical, magical place that is outside of the story that can always be the mystery, mystical magic box, like that you can only imagine what's there, you know. You know, we'll see if we ever get to the it in the fanfic. But yeah, I mean, that's the purpose of a shy. I think at one time I was like, there because of all the references to a shy. The only thing that kind of made sense was that there's some sort of party in a shy that was interested in Dany and her eggs, and that Illyrio was trying to send Dany there in order to, I don't know, like curry favor with the Red God people or something. I think I had a theory about that. Um, Looking back, I don't know if George ever had a plan, if he was, or if he ever was kind of figuring it out. Like knowing now that like there wasn't going to be dragons, and then the eggs were going to be randomly found outside of Vastoth Rock, and then placing the eggs in Illyrio's possession to give to Dany. Well, that changed all that vastly changes Illyrio's motivation well after the fact that like he's already been written as a character and he's already arranged this marriage to Khal Drogo for Viserys and all of this stuff. Like all of this stuff has already been established for him, and now we're retroactively giving him dragon eggs to give to Dany. Well, just because he you know he needed to. So I don't necessarily think that George actually had a plan, and George kind of like pokes fun of him at himself in A Dance with Dragons, where he starts talking about the fat man changing his plans because he's talking about himself, the fat man changing his plans, about the story, the Illyrio changing his plans. Okay, almost getting to the end. Raise the roof, raise the dead. "28 years later" is a bit of a letdown. Here's my beliefs about the 20. Look, I don't even know if I want to see 28 years later, because 28 days later is a fucking masterpiece of a movie. Okay, 28 days later is incredible. 28 weeks later is a pile of dung. I could not, like, what a horrible movie that is. Just like the number of like remarkable coincidences that need to happen in order for for everything to fall apart. You're just like, come on. Well, just 28 days later, oh, what a just a stylistic, incredible masterpiece that was. And so I don't even know, like 28 years later, like what you can do at this point. It just 28 weeks later was such a letdown that how can I possibly wanna revisit this? Um, Does Willis Tyrell have to do with Ario and Darkstar being in Old Town during Sam 2? No, Ario and Darkstar are on their quest to find Myrcella. And, you know, from where we left Ario and Hota and Darkstar, they were searching for Septa Eglantine. And the question is of like, where do septas go? Is kind of this thing. Well, where do septas go? You know? And so they're searching for a mother house, you know, like that's what they're doing in Old Town is they're going to the mother house to see if they can try to find Myrcella. That I mean, it's as simple as that. But Willis, I got to figure out how to put Willis in the story, because you're right, Willis needs to come in. Syrio caused Joffrey's death. Trying to think trying to think if there's anything that would have, because Syrio dies. I'm trying to think of anything, like even cats or anything like related that happens in the keep that could be attributed to Syrio and Arya. I don't think so. Like, I think Arya doesn't have anything to do with any. Preston, how do you overcome a sacrifice and fire fatigue? I mean, obviously I get fatigued by everything, but when people are, when I always have a live stream and there's always a show, like there's always a show coming, and there's always like a live stream coming, and there's always like Carmine bringing news. So it's like you can get fatigued, but you can't ever escape. You can't ever fucking escape. You can't ever escape. And now, so it's the only thing you can do, like the only thing that could end all of like this is somehow George, like, no, because George, if you came out with the Winds of Winter, then we'd be talking about the fucking Winds of Winter. So how do I mean, I would have to have there would have to be some event to like, like the only thing that could like cause the fatigue would be like George R. Martin like suing me or something, cease and desist order against the fanfic, and being like, you need to shut down your channel now or else you're going to get sued for $1 million. Like, that's the only thing that could be really like fatigue me at this point, to the part where you're just like, okay, I guess we're done. I guess we're just fucking done. We're wrapping everything up, So, I mean, you get fatigued, but you gotta keep doing it, because it's, this fucking thing is fun. This channel is fun. So, but I think before, the idea of like was when, you sort of like read from a certain perspective, you focus on the chapters that you never really focused on, and then you're interested again. Because I think a lot of people, it's first you're people get fatigued and you're talking about the John story over and over again, and then but then that gets tiring, so you just move on to somebody else. That's the thing, is there's so many little stories that there's a lot. Plans for Zolo the Fat and the fanfic and the Riverlands. I mean, obviously, like, we've put the Brave Companions in Old Town. And certainly Urswick the Faithful. And I think one of the Ibanies. I don't know if we haven't decided if Zolo's there. Obviously, like, I think I might put Zolo there. But obviously at some point Zolo needs to get back up to meet Jaime and Brienne again. Zolo, like, that's just a given. Like, that Zolo needs to meet Brienne and Jaime again. Zolo took Jaime's hand. Zolo tried to rape Brienne. And we know what happened to her other rapists. She inverse raped, killed them. Which, again, is like ironic kill, but not in like a smirking kind of way, walking away from the scene kind of awesome thing. Like, Brienne, she rape kills Shagwell and Rourke, but it's horrific. It's a horrific revenge that she gets. It's not, she's not happy about any of that. But so Brienne has to complete the trilogy, right? She's got to, like, that's just an inevitability for the story. Like, Zolo, Shagwell, and Rourke were thinking about raping Brienne. She, in turn, like, rape stabs Shagwell. She rape stabs Rourke, and she needs to freaking rape stab Zolo. Like, that's just all there is to it. Like, that's Zolo's endgame. I just don't know if we're going to put him in Old Town first, and have some adventures with him before he gets back up to Brienne and Jaime. You know, so as weird as all of that sounds, it's like look, man, we all know that the end game of Zolo the Fat is rape stab, right? Like that's just a given, right? That's just everybody fucking. I mean, the fact that I can like say this on a stream with people who've like heard me say this a million times, so like everybody's nodding at home, being like, hey, yeah, well, yeah, of course, it's a fucking given that Zolo the Fat is going to be rape stabbed by Brienne. I mean, come on. But like the fact that like, you know, that's just like at this point, like old hat, like, well, of course that's the fucking ending for Zolo the Fat. Hey Preston, big fan from Brazil. Have you heard of the channel Predictive History? It's a Chinese teacher talking about geopolitics. Thanks for everything. I have not heard about this. Predictive History. Huh. Interesting. So
Okay, so we are doing a special session of this class called Meet the Students. Now, I've been overwhelmed by the positive response online on YouTube, so thank you so much.
3 of these books, the idea of imagination is really important. For example, with the Iliad, I remember it was one of the first like big works of imagination that we really have.
Thanks so much. So Echo and Amber are in my class this year, and this year we did something crazy. And
by the way, it's I find it very interesting that he got himself on YouTube, because YouTube is banned in China. So that means he is like going behind the wall and getting his stuff out. Oh, he's just kind of blown up recently. That's kind of funny. Huh. I'll have to check his stuff out. It's very interesting. He's got a pretty good accent considering that he's in China. Interesting. What let me see him. Huh. Predict this is here. I'm sorry. I'll take a look. I'll show this to people. I'm sorry. This is this channel. This random Chinese guy talking about like sci-fi and like society, and stuff like that. So it's always these kind of weird, interesting things on the. I will take it. I'll take a look at it though. Azor High Reborn. I have so many fans from Brazil. Even though, I mean, and it's not, I mean, maybe it's because Carmine and I are always talking about Brazil that the algorithm feeds my stuff to Brazil. Because I have a legitimately, actually, someone even here, like somebody's like so many Brazilians. It's true. Like I have a great number of Brazilian fans. Because I think it's the algorithm. I think Carmine and I talk about Brazil so much, and then we talk about A Song of Ice and Fire, and therefore we get all of the Brazilian A Song of Ice and Fire fans. Marcel is there to introduce Dorne. It's sad that this little girl isn't even a character. Shaking my head. This is why she's a character in the fanfic. She's a big, or I mean, she's a character we searched for, at least in the fanfic. Yeah, it's I don't know, you know, there is a real question about Dorne and the Ironborn and you know, how much George originally wanted them to be part of the story and how much they are becoming part of the story. Because you're talking about this like massively expanding plots that like have kind of taken over. And in some ways you could say, okay, well, it's it'll still just be cut off, and then it'll just be this random stuff that happens in the middle for no reason at all, and then it'll all get back to our core characters at the end, our fucking Arya, Jon, Sansa kind of thing. But it's like, I don't know. I mean, you have no idea with George's like gardening method. Because remember, the Dornish story started off as a prologue. It was just going to be a few little snippets of a prologue. And then all of a sudden it becomes many chapters. And then many more. And then a whole new point of view coming in that wasn't, I mean, well, after the point of views that were already put in. Like after you start off with this prologue, and then all of a sudden the prologue's not working, it's getting too long. So you break it out into actual fucking chapters. You got your Aerys Oakheart, you got your Arya Martell, you got your Arya Hota, and then George decides independently to invent the Quentyn point of view, and which expands into more chapters, you know. So the Dorne story, like, it's certainly growing, you know. And the same with the Ironborn. And you can even say like the Ironborn, especially with Asha, that like Asha was a point of view that he was going to shove in the prologue and not worry about it. And now Asha's like in charge of the Stannis story, like the story that the people are most interested in. So. Oh, I think they keep pulling me back in as Godfather 3, weirdly enough. I know it's like such a quotable line. I keep trying to get out and they keep pulling me back in. That's actually, I think that's Godfather 3. Like, no one's seen Godfather 3, but like, I think that's from it. But, so like, are the stone dragons going to wake up or what? Why set it up if it isn't going to be used? Let's add some more dragons into the dance. So the stone dragons thing. Yes, it was certainly something that George put in there a lot with regards to Melisandre's visions and Azor Ahai. It was going to have a bigger role in early drafts of Dance with Dragons. There's many more references to these stone dragons waking. There were more references to like Melisandre's visions and the Night Fort being this incredibly central location where, you know, magic would happen and whatever. And then it just didn't fucking happen. If you read A Dance with Dragons, you'll note that the Night Fort plot goes nowhere, right? We need to get the Night Fort going again. Oh, the Night Fort. That's where the Night's King was at. Oh my gosh. You know? And then Selyse arrives and they're like, well, the Night's Fort's not ready. Okay. And then Jon gets killed. And no, the Night Fort was never finished. It was never prepared. Like they spent all this time like, we got to get the Night Fort ready. Well, no, sorry, Jon's dead. The Waking Stone Dragons thing also kind of disappears. I mean, it might be there just in the whole burning Shireen thing. But then people are like, well, wait, is Shireen getting burned to bring back Stannis? Is Shireen getting burned to bring back Jon? Is Shireen getting burned to wake stone dragons? We don't know. But the stone dragons, it is kind of has kind of dropped. But they do make a reference in they will be referenced in the Melisandre fanfic chapter. But we'll see about stone dragons. Zolo finds Ozempic. Be funny if he started getting thinner. Imagine George R. R. Martin spends the last years of his life pursuing a lawsuit against a fanfic book club instead of just finishing the story. Weirder things have happened, man. It's weirder things. Zolo got lost. I mean, we got so many other characters. Like people sometimes bring it up, like different lost characters, like characters I haven't thought of. Like there was another traveling Night's Watchman that was supposed to be recruiting people that disappeared. It's never been mentioned again in the story, stuff like that. So, where's Zolo? It's just that in A Feast for Crows, Jamie specifically is like, Zolo is still out there. Like he specifically thinks Zolo is still out there. Strong Belwas finds out that he had balls the whole time. He's just too fat to show. Is Strong Belwas a eunuch? I mean, I understand why you think so, because, he's a slave and he's bald, but he has the smooth cheeks of a eunuch. Oh, he is a eunuch. Ridiculous. Why would anyone... It's just the idea of like chopping people's balls off to make them fighters is such so silly. Why would anyone do that? How did I forget that Strong Belwas was a eunuch? It just doesn't seem like it, right? Was John Danny a Luke Leia possibility? Probably. The they're from the beginning. I think probably even before R plus L equals D, there was R plus L equals J plus D, that they were actually twins at the Tower of Joy, and that Danny is brought, and that explains like Ashara Dane, and the explanation becomes cleaner at that point. Like Ashara Dane disappears with the Danny baby, and Ned disappears with the John baby, and that way like all of Ned's weirdness in a Game of Thrones makes sense because of the Danny connection, but you don't mess anything up with the John, right? Like Danny and John being twins is pretty old theory. That, to its credit, does explain Ashara Dane. Like it explains, and all of Ned's actions in a Game of Thrones. He wakes up from his fucking Tower of Joy dream and immediately starts asking about Danny. So like, all of these things, like, I'm sure it was a possibility. I'm sure. And, John eventually, then there's the question of like, okay, well, John eventually like is in a relationship where is okay because he's banging his aunt. And keep in mind, this is Middle Ages, so banging your aunt is fine. And then finds out that it's his sister. Yeah, I guess that's straight up George's alley. I mean, he's already got Jamie and Danny twincest. Why not have a second twincest? Why not? So certainly it's possible. Probably thought about. I think even when there was like some references to like, is it Alfie Allen talking about it? I don't know. Yeah, he said that Alfie Allen said in an interview that he said that Jon Snow's parentage will play out in a bit of a Luke Skywalker situation. And that got a lot of people thinking that he was talking about twins. So yeah, there was an interview with Vulture where Alfie Allen he says, "What do you I asked him about who oh, here we go. This is Alfie Allen talking to George R. R. Martin. He became although George R. R. Martin, when I spoke to him, he asked me about my sister. He became a fan of hers during the auditions. What did you ask him about in return? I asked him about who Jon Snow's real parents were, and he told me I can't say who, but I'll tell you that it involves a bit of a Luke Skywalker situation. It will all come to fruition eventually. The whole thing with all the fight over proper succession is partly inspired by the War of the Roses in the late 1400s, and back then, to ensure pedigree, the monarchs were all kind of inbred. It's definitely fucked up, but definitely happened back then, so that's why there's incest within the Targaryen line. It's toned down, though, right? So I guess, so making sense of that quote now, you could say, well, okay, maybe he was talking about Luke and Leia having a romantic interest in Star Wars and in The Empire Strikes Back kissing, and then them finding out that they're related, being twins. Or, Jon Snow and Daenerys get into a sexual relationship and then find out that they're nephew and aunt. But the thing is, nephew and aunt is just not shocking. Like, nephew and aunt is not shocking to medieval people who are fucking cousins all day long. So I could understand why people took this paragraph and are like, oh man, are we talking about twins at the Tower of Joy, Luke and Leia? Because Luke and Leia are twins, So I get it. There was that. A Zolo high. Stop talking about Brazil. Everybody fucking loves Brazil. Carmine can't remember Brazil at all, but he hates Brazil, and I like trying to tell him that it's not a bad place. Not a bad place. I would definitely live in first of all, there's so many livable cities in Brazil. Brasilia is super livable, but Sao Paulo and Rio are both really fun, infinite cities where things are so cheap and incredible. And just other cities, are fine. Florianopolis, Foz. Balon was prepared to enter the war before Theon arrived in A Clash of Kings. Was he always going to attack the north, or did Theon's return alter his plans? He was always going to attack the north. That was straight up his plan. His plan from the beginning is clearly take the neck. That's it. And if you look at this, what he does, he sends the bulk of his force to take the neck. That's all he has to do. All he has to do is take the neck, and that's it. And then they can just from then on just attack, flee, do whatever they want for as long as they want, because the North doesn't have any ships, or they won't have ships for years, so it's and then his whole thing is then using it as a bargaining chip to try to get some lands from Tywin. But yeah, no, that's his plan the whole time. Theon I mean, Theon screws things up by attacking Winterfell, but yeah, but the whole thing was just take the neck. Like that was all it was. That's his whole plan, is take the neck. Azolo high, Azolo high. Davos ending idea. He kills or tries to kill Mel, and Devin kills him to defend and avenge her. Ooh. That'd be pretty brutal. It's so funny, like going back. So somebody asked me a few weeks ago. That'd be really brutal, but I have a different kind of ending occurring upwards with the North here. But the going back to Devin, specifically Devin Seaworth, who, by the way, like, this is one of those like little mistakes as well that George makes. Like, for some reason, Stannis knows that Davos is dead, or thinks that Davos is dead, you know? When he makes it to the village. But we have no evidence that Mel or Devin think that Davos is dead. So none of them have gotten any sort of news on this, or it hasn't been passed to Stannis at all. But somehow Stannis got news on it. And and it's like, did he get it from Deepwood Mott? Did he get it from the Karstarks arriving? But like, Devin doesn't know that his dad is dead, or he might. Neither does Mel. It's kind of this like weird thing, and it's just like, did George ever think about that? Did George think about the news of Davos's death making it to the Wall? Because that would be a big deal. Yeah. Anyway, also, like, going back to, somebody asked me a few weeks ago, like, if you had to, could A Dance with Dragons and A Feast for Crows be trimmed into one book? And the answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. It can mostly be done by cutting whole chapters, but to get it over the finish line, you have to start shaving certain parts. But I was thinking about like the Melisandre chapter, and so much of the Melisandre chapter is just about Devin Seaworth for no fucking goddamn reason. Like, it just fucking goes on and on about Devin Seaworth, and it's really hilarious once you sort of like look at it that way. You're like, why is she talking about Devin so much? And you realize, like, oh, he's right, because this is George is stuck, right? George is stuck and doesn't know what he wants to do with the story at this point. This was his like big. Remember, he was like stuck specifically in like this point with the Jon, Tyrion and Dany stories have like sticking points, and like the Mel chapter was him trying to get out of it, and he just does. This is here. I'll bring up Dance here. It's really quite. It's pretty hilarious to go back and be like, oh, why is this here? So here's the Melisandre chapter, and of course, visions like are the first couple pages. And then 2.5, 3 pages of visions. And then we get into Devin. And it's like, Devin, now we're getting this full fucking page on Devin. We get this full page. Like, from just out of nowhere. Devin was not pleased to be here. The lad had taken great pride in serving the king's squire. Like, da da da, okay. In truth, he was here because Melisandre had asked him. Okay. Devon was quick and smart and able, too. All right, is Devon gonna, like, play a role? Like, later in the story? No. No. Like, this is like Raleigh Duckworth. Like, how much time is dedicated to Raleigh Duckworth in Tyrion 3? Like, why are we talking about Raleigh Duckworth? Like, what's fucking going on? It just goes on and on about, like, why? What are you doing, George? Stop talking about Devon Seaworth. Who will be the 1000th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch? It's one of those things, like, do I think George's original plan was for John to come back and be the 1000th Lord Commander? I mean, he's playing with these numbers in such a way that it seems like it's going to be, like, super significant, right? Like, oh my gosh, like 998th. I mean, we naturally hear that number and we're like, oh my God, well, something's going to happen to hit 1,000, right? Something with 1,000 Lord Commanders. Like, at the same time, like, George knows how stupid that is. Like, he knows how these numbers are empty expectations and that he likes to subvert them. And so he's the type of person to, like, either have us never get to 1,000 or have it be passed over really fast and have nothing happen. Like, in the second book, we're all, like, pumped. We're like, oh my gosh, something's going to happen on the 300th year after Aegon's Landing. Nothing happens, like, nothing fucking happens. So, I do think it's a bit of I do think numbers and things like that are a bit of a red herring. Like, there's literally no logical reason that there would be anything special about the 1000th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. None. And George knows that. Like, why would there be a special 1000th Lord Commander? Why? It's just, there. So, he's building tension, but George likes to build tension to then have it be ruined. Joffrey dies on New Year's Day of the year 300. No. I think it's his name day. Name day is right. Let me see this again. Blah blah blah. Well, we're trying to get the dates. No, you're right. I'm wrong. Joffrey dies on New Year's Day. He hacks up a book. I guess so. Yeah, I guess Joffrey dies on New Year's Day of 300. Yeah. Still, I mean, I guess it's epic for him. Like, it's not really that epic for everybody else, right? Like, Tommen just becomes king, right? And Marjorie marries Tommen. Things like that. So Sansa escapes. Oh, right. Yes, or 301. Is it, I can't believe I can't believe that we didn't talk about this. So, yeah, the new century should be the year 300 because he says because it should be the year 301, right? Because the first year you start in the year 1, right? You don't start in year 0. You start in the year 1. But all fan dating and actually all subsequent dating with Fire and Blood is based on the idea that the red wedding was the purple wedding was in the year 300, but he said it's the beginning of a new century, which should be the year 301. Jackie is completely correct. George R. Martin and the entire fandom has fucked up with regards to the year, what year it is. But right, the purple wedding should be the year 301 being the new century. 300 years after Aegon's conquest. He didn't conquer in the year 0. He conquered in the year, should be the year 1. Red Comet is 300 years after the landing. Joffrey's death day, 300 years after the coronation. Right. So 300 years would be the year 301 because the first year is 1. The first year is not 0. Have you seen the meme where Tucker Carlson asked Luke the population of the Death Star? No, but it was pretty. I mean, I'll grant that Tucker Carlson had a fucking great fucking roasting of Ted Cruz, where he's like, "What's the population of Iran?" And he's like, "What? You tell me what the population of Iran is." And he's like, 92 million. Like, what do you like? I knew it was around 90 million. I didn't know it was 92, but I knew it was like 90 million. But like, the fact that Ted Cruz had no fucking clue and did not even want to guess shows what a fucking like asshole he is. In my opinion, the Brotherhood of Banners is the one thing the show did unquestionably better than the books. Barrock and Thoros come alive in a way book them never did. What other aspects do you think of the show are better? I think, all right. I think the actor performances of certain characters are undeniably better. I think Alfie Allen's portrayal of Theon Greyjoy is better. I think that Charles Dance's portrayal of Tywin is better, obviously. I think even George kind of admits that characters like Osha might be better. Trying to think what else like really works like better in the show. They give some good backstory with Robert and Cersei in the show that's better in that first season. Aging up the kids, aging up all of the characters was a good idea. Trying to think of some other things that are just like I think making Viserys more sympathetic in the show was also kind of better. I mean, there's definitely some things I really like in the show's portrayal, but like but usually it might all come from like really good acting performances. But I'm trying to think like plot wise, like stuff like that, like what do I think actually works? But I think that giving more humanization to Tywin, making him a little less of an absolute monster. The same with Viserys really works. But I don't know. I mean, those first 3 seasons are great, but so are the first 3 books. So what do you? Um, maybe they have a year zero. I don't think you can have a year zero. The common saying is Aegon is since Aegon's conquest. The thing is, I think in the song, like A Song of Ice and Fire, like they have him getting coronated in like -1. So like, they essentially solve everything by having -1 be year zero. In order to fix it, because it is a mistake. Let's go here. Let's see. So where's my copy of Fire and Blood? Fire and Blood. It's like these like random fucking things that we've like gotten to this point. Like, where's my Fire and Blood at? Fucking A. Fine, maybe it'll be in the search in the World of Ice and Fire. Coronation. See, even when George like does it himself, he starts getting even more kind of like retconny, right? The Maces of the Citadel, who keep the histories of Westeros. True scholars know that such dating is far from precise. Aegon's conquest of the Seven Kingdoms did not take place in a single day. More than 200 years passed as Old Town coronation. More than 2 years passed between Aegon's landing and his Old Town coronation, and even then, the conquest remained incomplete since Dorne remained unsubdued. Even the start date is a matter of misconception. Many assume wrongly that the reign of King Aegon Targaryen began on the day he landed at the mouth of the Blackwater beneath the Three Hills. Not so. You can say that most of Aegon's actual conquering took place in 2 to 1 BC before conquest, you know. And so like so I think they're saying that they're probably gonna put the coronation at 1 BC in order to just I don't even know if he does. Did it even? What does the wiki say on this? On this incredibly important situation where they've fucked the years. Aegon's coronation. Oh, Aegon's coronation, they say... Actually, they say Aegon's coronation happened in 1 AC. They've kind of really screwed... I mean, they screwed up all of this, right? So, like, it hasn't really been 300 years since Aegon's landing at all, because since Aegon's landing happened in, like, 2 BC, so, like, everything with regards to these, like, Endworlders and, like, the dating and stuff, and, like, Joffrey saying it's a new century. I don't know what that's based on. It's not based on anything that makes any sense. Like, what specifically would have happened in the year 1 BC from them to... Because if his year 1 after conquest... No, they've... This is just all fun. Yeah. You know what? Big error in the book. Okay. You just can't, like... What happens in the year 1 BC that they would say new century? Because it's got to be in the 1 year before conquest. And most of that happens in, like, the fighting is all happening in 2 B, like the landing happens in 2 BC. And the fighting is happening, and then he gets coronated in after conquest. So, like, what are they measuring 300 years from in the new century? Nothing makes sense about anything now with regards to Joffrey's comment that it's a new century, or the 300 year and worlder people. Like, none of that makes sense anymore. Like, it makes zero sense. Because if they're talking about his coronation, it should be the year 301. And if they're talking about the landing, it should have happened in 299. So, and it doesn't sound like any of these people would be like that into history and know what they're talking about here. None of this is all like, it's just all messed up. Jackie's like, I'm sorry I brought this up. No, but you're absolutely right though. You're absolutely right. So, okay, the first century is only 99 years. Just to, like, right, the conquest took several years, but they specifically talking about how, it's really special because it's been 3 centuries. This is a new century. Do Westeros sees no integers? I don't know. How do you feel David Foster Wallace would feel about A Song of Ice and Fire? He would hate it. David Foster Wallace would hates everything. He would hate it. He would probably say something like, well, this is, big fun, like fluff fiction, and this is all, like, that's all fine and like short amounts, but like small amounts, but let's not pretend that this is like real literature. Like, that's what he would say. Like, he'd be very insulting of it. Like, keep in mind, like, what he thinks is great writing is different. So, but yeah. This is what happens when their literacy rate is like 1%. I mean, that's a very good point. And everybody is not that smart, and everybody's just like, they don't need to be having this debate about like what a century is and things like that. that like it hasn't been 300 years since it's been 299 years or 301 years, but it's specifically not been that one, you know. So, oh man, 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 man. All right, guys, thank you for staying with me tonight. I'm going to cut this one short because I'm still kind of exhausted. But thanks for being with me. And yeah, I'm going to try to record Davos soon. So look for that soon. And that's about all. All right. Thanks for being with me. I'll talk to you guys later.